Hello. Today we're going to start Lemonade War. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to review our before you read page. Then we'll read chapter 1. We'll do our connections page. And then we'll go over our homework. So let's get started. In your packet, you have your before you read page. So, number 1 was kind of an opinion, so we're going to skip over that. Number 2, who is the author? The author is Jacqueline Davies. It's a French name, so it's kind of hard to pronounce. Jacqueline, okay, or Jacqueline, either one. When was the Lemonade War originally published? 2007. The copyright says 2007. And then the last one's kind of an opinion too. Are you interested? Why or why not? Then we will work in our packet after we read some more. So let's go ahead and jump right in with chapter 1, starting on page 1. Now, the author starts this chapter kind of different than a lot of chapters. What do you notice is different about it? It starts with like a definition, and if you notice, it's the same word as the title of the chapter. So we have slump. It's a noun. A drop in the activity of a business or the economy. Evan lay on his back in the dark, throwing the baseball up in a straight line and catching it in his bare hands. Thwap, thwap. The ball made a satisfying sound as it slapped his palm. His legs flopped in a V. Sorry. Ooh. His arms stretched up to the ceiling, and the thought that if he missed he'd probably break his nose made the game just interesting enough to keep going. On the floor above he heard footsteps, his mother's, then a long, loud, scraping, groaning sound. He stopped throwing the ball to listen. His mother was dragging something heavy across the kitchen floor, probably the broken air conditioner. A week ago, right at the beginning of the heat wave, the air conditioner in his mother's attic office had broken. The man from Sears had installed a brand new one, but left the old one sitting right in the middle of the kitchen floor. The Tressicks had been walking around it all week. Scrape! Evan stood up. His mom was strong, but this was a two-person job. Hopefully she wouldn't ask him why he was hiding in the dark basement. And hopefully Jesse wouldn't be in the kitchen at all. He'd been avoiding her for 2 days now, and it was getting harder by the minute. The house just wasn't that big. Evan had his hand on the railing when the scraping noise stopped. He heard footsteps fading into silence. She'd given up. Probably the heat, he thought. It was that kind of weather. Given up kind of weather. He went back to lying on the floor. Thwop, thwop. Then he heard the basement door open. Pshh. Evan caught the ball and froze. Evan? Jesse's voice sounded echoey in the darkness. Evan, you down there? Evan held his breath. He lay completely still. The only thing that moved was the pins and needles prickling his fingers. So we kind of talked about in class, that's not a literal meaning. That's a figurative one. Meaning he has that sensation or that feeling, but he doesn't actually have the pins and needles in his hands. He heard the door start to close. Long breath out. Then it stopped and opened again. Footsteps on the carpeted stairs. A black outline of Jessie standing on the bottom step with daylight squirting all around her. Evan didn't move a muscle. Evan, is that you? Jessie took one short step into the basement. Is that? She inched her way toward him and then kicked him with her bare foot. Hey, watch it, would ya? Said Evan, swatting her leg. He suddenly felt stupid lying there in the dark. I thought you were a sleeping bag, she said. I couldn't see. What are you doing down here? How come the lights are off? It's too hot with the lights on, he said. He talked in a flat voice, trying to sound like the most boring person on the whole planet. If he kept it up, Jessie might just leave him alone. Mom's back in her office, said Jessie, lying down on the couch. Working, she groaned as she said the word. Evan didn't say anything. He went back to throwing the ball. Straight up, straight down. Maybe silence would get Jessie to leave. He was starting to feel words piling up inside him, crowding his lungs, forcing out all the air. It was like having a chest full of bats beating their wings, fighting to get out. She tried to move the air conditioner. But it's too heavy, said Jessie. Evan tightened his grip. Go away, he thought. Go away before I say something mean. It's gonna be hot all week, Jessie continued, in the 90s, all the way up till Labor Day. So it kind of gives us a good timeline. When in the year is this happening? In the summer, and specifically towards the end of summer. Labor Day is like right before school. Bwop, bwop. So, what do you want to do? Jessie asked. Scream, thought Evan. Jessie never got it when you were giving her the big freeze. What do you think that could mean? She just went right on acting as if everything were great. It made it really hard to tell her to bug off without telling her to bug off. Whenever Evan did that, he felt bad. So, what do you want to do? Jessie asked again, nudging him with her foot. It was a direct question. Evan had to answer it or explain why he wouldn't. And he couldn't get into that. That was too complicated, too hurtful. Huh. So, what do you want to do? She asked for the third time. Doing it, said Evan. Nah, come on, for real. For real, he said. We could ride our bikes to the 7-Eleven, she said. No money, she said. You just got $10 from Grandma for your birthday. Spent it, said Evan. On what? Stuff, Evan said. Jessie's voice dribbled down to nothing. Evan stopped throwing the ball and looked at her. What? Jessie pulled her legs tight to her chest. Nothing, she said. Right, said Evan. He knew that Jessie had money. Jessie always had money squirreled away in her lockbox, but that didn't mean she was going to share it. Evan went back to throwing the baseball. He felt a tiny flame of anger shoot up and lick his face. Thwap, thwap. We could build a fort in the woods, said Jessie. Too hot. We could play Stratego. Too boring. We could build a track and race marbles. Too stupid. A thin spider web of sweat draped itself over his forehead, spreading into his hair. With every throw, he told himself, it's not her fault. But he could feel his anger growing. He started popping his elbow to put a little more juice on the ball. It was flying a good 4 feet into the air every time. Straight up, straight down. Pop, thwap, pop, thwap. The bats in his chest were going nuts. What's the matter with you? Asked Jessie. You've been so weird the last couple of days. Aw, man, here they come. I just don't want to play a dumb game like Stratego, he said. You like Stratego. I only picked that because it's your favorite game. I was being nice, in case you hadn't noticed. Look, there are only 6 days of summer, and I'm not going to waste them playing a dumb game. Evan felt his heartbeat speed up. Part of him wanted to stuff a sock in his mouth, and part of him wanted to deck his sister. It's a stupid game, and it's for babies, and I don't want to play a stupid baby game. Pop, thwap, pop, thwap. Why are you being so mean? Evan knew he was being mean, and he hated being mean, especially to her. But he couldn't help it. He was so angry and so humiliated and so full of bats. There was nothing else he could be, except alone, and she'd taken that away from him. You're the genius, he said. You go figure it out. Good. That'll shut her up. For once. Evan watched the ball fly into the air. Is this because of the letter? Jessie asked. Crack. Evan had taken his eyes off the ball for 1 second, just for 1 second, and the ball came crashing down on his nose. Crud! Oh, crud! He curled over onto his side, grabbing his nose with both hands. There was a blinding, booming pain right behind his eyes that was quickly spreading to the outer edges of his skull. Do you want some ice? He heard Jessie ask in a calm voice. What do you think? He shouted. Yeah? She stood up. No, I don't want any stupid ice. The pain was starting to go away, like a humongous wave that crashes with a lot of noise and spray, but then slowly fizzles away into nothing. Evan rolled to a sitting position and took his hands away from his nose. With his thumb and index finger, he started to pinch the bridge. Was it still in a straight line? Jessie peered at his face in the dim light. You're not bleeding, she said. Yeah, well, it hurts, he said. A lot. It's not broken, she said. You don't know that, he said. You don't know everything you know. You think you do, but you don't. It's not even swollen. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Evan held his nose with one hand and hit his sister's knee with the other. Then he picked up the baseball, struggled to his feet. Leave me alone. I came down here to get away from you, and you just had to follow. You ruin everything. You ruined my summer, and now you're going to ruin school. I hate you. When he got to the bottom of the steps, he threw the baseball down in disgust. Thud. Good first chapter. There's a lot of different things going on in here. Specifically, let's think about the brother and sister Evan and Jesse's relationship. Overall, do they try and get along with each other? I think that they do, because remember Evan said, I'm trying to not let it. It's not her fault. Like, trying to just give her some clues that I want to be alone. But Jessie didn't really want to be alone, did she? She wanted somebody to be around her. Yeah. Let's take a look in our packet. Right? So you're going to skip over your chapter 1 questions, and we're going to look at this page first, okay? You're going to make 3 connections that you have read so far in Lemonade War. You're going to make a text to self, so something in this book that reminded you of you. Then you're going to do a text to text. This book. Can you think of another book that it reminds you of? Something that has happened that you've read somewhere else. And one more, a text to world. Have you... what connection can you make from the story to something in the world? Let's pause the video while you work on those, and then I'll go through some examples that I can think of. All right. So my text to self is, I kind of fight. When I was little, I would fight with my brother too, just like Evan and Jesse would fight. So that's my text to self. My text to text is kind of this relationship between Evan and Jesse kind of reminds me of the relationship between Fern and Avery in Charlotte's Web. And text to world, this one has quite a few. We talked about how siblings fight. That could be a world, right? Across the world, people fight. Siblings fight. Might have talked about how there's heat waves and sometimes people lose power or appliances break, like the air conditioner. Awesome. All right, then we're going to go back to this page. And I'm going to quickly go over what you got to do for your homework, for your questions for today. So the first one, you have to write the word and the whole definition for the word at the beginning of the chapter. Number 2 is a little complicated, so I want to explain it. What are 3 different reasons why the author italicized words in this chapter? Italicized is when the word's kind of slanted at an angle. So the author used a lot of those words. Did you notice that when we were reading how it had a lot of italicized? There's 3 kind of main reasons the author would do that. Think through it. You might need to reread parts of it. What is the author trying to get when he's putting those words specifically into italics? Why is the author putting those words in italics? There's kind of 3 big reasons. Number 3, what's the big freeze? Okay, Evan said he's trying to give her the big freeze. So you gotta explain to me what that is. Number 4, we worked with metaphors before. So remember, you're comparing using is or are. Find a metaphor in this chapter. Write the sentence down here and the page number, and then tell me what it means. Then on the back side, what type of relationship do you think that Evan and Jesse have as siblings? Okay? Describe both positive and negative examples. Do they have more of a good or more of a bad? Kind of list out a few ideas for both of those. Okay? Number 6, which character's perspective is this chapter told from? Whose point of view is this one mostly in? And number 7, how do the events, so what happened in this chapter, relate or kind of match up to the word defined at the beginning? So that slump. Do the words in this, does the events, what happened in this chapter, kind of match that word? Or is there no relationship? Do they not match up? Tell me why. Either way. That's what you've got for your homework. Thanks for joining. Talk to you soon.